Do you ever wish your day wasn't dictated by your health? Are you tired of being tired all the time, or is pain holding you back from enjoying your time with your family? Would you like to manage your symptoms holistically, but you just don't know where to begin? I am so excited that you're here. This podcast will help you understand how natural remedies work so you can relieve your symptoms and live a fuller life. My name is Penny. I'm an occupational therapist, past pharmaceutical rep, a mom, and a wife with a strong faith, and for 25 years, I battled through debilitating Crohn's disease. I took all the medicine and did all the surgeries that stole so much time with my family, but never truly healed me. I finally realized if I was going to survive this disease, I needed to open my stubborn eyes to alternative solutions. I researched how perfectly our bodies work with plants and a lifestyle that made my health less of a burden to my family and aligned so beautifully with my faith and my medical training. If you are ready to reclaim your life with holistic options that are easy to implement as a busy mom and provide relief that lasts, this is the podcast for you. Hey there, Becoming Natural fans. This is Penny, and I wanted to let you know that I am easing into summer with a little bit more margin time with my kids, a little rest, and prepping one of mine for college. Deep breathing, right? So you might see a few episodes pop back into the feed. They're not there for fillers. They're actually favorites. These are some of the most shared and most downloaded conversations that still pack a punch today. And if you're new here, it's the perfect time to scroll back to the early days and hear how this whole becoming natural journey began for me, which was just as much of a surprise for me as for anybody else. So whether you're folding laundry, driving to summer camp, I'm right here with you. New episodes are still coming, just with a little bit more grace in the mix. And since I would love to go back and share the beginning of how Becoming Natural began, this is just a great time to look back at some of my favorite episodes. I hope you enjoy. Thanks. Have a great one. So here we are. This is my most downloaded episode of all time, which should be no surprise at all, about Candida yeast overgrowth, because so many people have it and it is related so closely to gut issues. So if you've ever wondered if your gut issues might have a deeper root, you're not alone. And this episode struck a nerve in the very best way possible with most of my listeners. And it was only my third episode, and it is still the most downloaded episode I have. Just a heads up, there's a part 2 where I spill all the dirty, literally, details of the detox, the die-off, and the real-time healing process. And I'll be sure to link it in the show notes so you can binge both back to back. I don't want you to miss it. Have a good one and enjoy. Today, I'm going to go way back in time. Lucky for me, as I recognized my health was declining more rapidly after my third pregnancy, I started to keep a private blog as a kind of health record, just for me, and maybe even for my kids, should they ever have to deal with anything I was going through. I am so grateful I did it, as it has helped me immensely with the details for this podcast, for the chapter I wrote, and the book that I'm writing, details I never would have remembered. Because I used to say I only wanted to remember the good parts of my healing and the miracles. Now that I am more balanced post-therapy, it's strangely really good to be reminded how bad it was, to know exactly how far I've come, to know the miracles, to see the growth, to understand, and to truly know how empowering it is that if I can do that, then I can do this. It has made me fearless. I always favor challenges as growth, and it is my leading verse in my chapter of the anthology that we have released. 2 Corinthians 12, 9-10 is my favorite verse, and the verse that I have come to live by. But he said to me, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in my weaknesses, in my insults, in my hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong." This is so touching to me because so many people would say, "Penny, you're so strong." And as much as they wanted to be kind and they had their heart in the right place, I absolutely hated hearing it because I didn't want to be strong and I was not strong. So the power or the strength that they saw in me was not my own. I had absolutely nothing. The strength that they saw in me was my faith in my God, and he was literally sustaining my entire family as well. So that verse, I hope that my kids will always remember in hardships and persecutions and difficulties, that Christ's power is resting on them, and to always lean into your faith whenever you have a challenge in your life. So, okie dokie, time travel. I had a brief hiccup as I was considered high risk for the first time in my third pregnancy during 2009. I was incredibly blessed to have 3 uneventful and truly healthy pregnancies despite having Crohn's disease. The details are a little fuzzy for me, but I was ultimately given the go-ahead after my rheumatologist said I had to wait for about a year for my thyroid to cooperate before I could get pregnant with my sweet little caboose. I was not happy about having to wait, but given the results of who he is and who his friends are, I know that God knew the perfect time for him to be born. His timing was always perfect, despite my pouting or trying to control things. I truthfully can't remember exactly why I was high risk at the time, outside of the fact that I had a specific antibody that I was told I could have had all along with all 3 pregnancies and I just wasn't tested for it, or it could have just appeared. Regardless, if that antibody had passed into my womb, I would lose my baby. There was nothing I could do if it happened, so instead of spending my time worrying about it, since that wouldn't help any of us, I just ignored it. I dealt with that risk the same way I probably dealt with a lot of my illness or really most hard things in my life, which would not be the healthiest way, but I just didn't acknowledge it at all to myself or to anyone outside of that monthly visit. When I was first pregnant with my number 3, the husband of a sweet friend from high school was diagnosed with cancer. She kept an amazing blog about their experience and his healing that I kept up with regularly. His doctors put him on the Candida, or Candida is what I really think it is, but everybody says Candida. But his doctors put him on this Candida diet while he was taking chemotherapy because they said people respond better to chemotherapy when they eat this way. I had never heard of it before, but as she spelled out what he wasn't allowed to eat, I thought it quite interesting that most of the things were items that were hurting me so terribly since I had been pregnant. I went to the ER, in fact, in my first weeks of my 3rd pregnancy because the pain was so bad, I thought I might be having an ectopic pregnancy. I did a little research on the Candida diet, and with renewed hope, I started really believing that I might have found an answer to many of my symptoms. Candida yeast overgrowth. The possible causes of the overgrowth include long-term antibiotic use, check. Autoimmune disease, check. High doses of steroids, check. Having a parasite, check. Multiple childbirths, check, check, and check. And use of chemotherapy. I had 5 out of 6 of the potential causes. As for the symptoms, one website quoted a possible overgrowth if you had 18 or more symptoms. I stopped counting at 22. I visited my nutritionist and shared what I had learned, and he completely agreed. He said my blood work supported this, and it was likely I could have Candida overgrowth. He also told me something huge. Small symptoms began just after my first child was born for the first time since well before I was even married, and I decided at that point through trial and error that I was actually fructose intolerant. Every time I ate anything with fructose in it, I got sick. My nutritionist actually told me that that was most definitely not fructose intolerance as he did that specific blood test. But with this new perspective, anything with sugar was actually feeding the yeast and making me sick. Since I was pregnant with my 3rd, I couldn't begin to remove the Candida completely, so I was waiting until I had him and had finished nursing before I started the big diet. By the end of August of 2009, we had a healthy baby boy, number 3. It's important to note that when I was pregnant, my Crohn's always went into remission. It was glorious. I used to say if I could bottle up how I felt when I was pregnant and take it as a pill forever, I would be set for life. I felt amazing. I had energy, no pain, no discomfort. I was living my best life with my boys. However, as soon as I had delivered and nursed as long as I could, which I was never good at nursing, the Crohn's would not only return, but rear its ugly head with greater vengeance after each baby. I knew after my 3rd that my family was complete. I was beyond content, and my body was also telling me no more. So I listened to my body, relieved to have 3 healthy and happy boys, and truth be told, I always wanted 3 boys, so for me, it was perfection. Shortly after I had Will, my 3rd baby, my symptoms started to return with even more intensity. I was getting discouraged really, really fast. I developed terrible joint pain, muscle pain, to the point that I was on chronic, high doses of painkillers. I was so frustrated, and I certainly didn't feel like a young new mom. My rheumatologist told me, I am so sorry, but you might be on pain meds for the rest of your life. This absolutely horrified me. A very dear friend of mine was a super health nut and told me, Penny, you know, I have eaten everything in the world that tastes like cardboard, and she really had. But you need to do the Candida yeast diet. It will change your life, and I will connect you with someone who can help you through it. I had so many symptoms, and this was exactly what I had learned about through my friend's blog. I felt like the Lord was completely pointing me in the right direction. In fact, I took the pre-test to see the likelihood that I had yeast overgrowth, and my score was off the charts before I ever finished the test. I have tried many times since 2009 to locate the company responsible for the workbook I have to no avail. It was white labeled, and calls, emails, and internet searches went unanswered over several years. So I'm working on pulling all that information together in my own way to share with you. Hopefully, potentially a part 2 of this episode. I might just pull something together with my own opinions, experiences sprinkled in, some recipes. I've kept this information for 15 years. It is good stuff. So some things that might make you higher risk for having a Candida yeast overgrowth. Number 1, history of taking tetracycline or broad-spectrum antibiotics. Number 2, persistent yeast infections. Number 3, history of cortisone drugs for more than 2 weeks at a time. 4, do you crave sugar? 5, do you crave breads?
The major symptoms I identified with was lethargy, poor memory, inability to make decisions, muscle aches, abdominal pain, constipation or diarrhea, bloating, belching, gas, anxiety, cold hands or feet, shaking, or irritable when hungry. The minor symptoms I identified with inability to concentrate, feeling of my head swelling and pressure above my ears, indigestion or heartburn, food sensitivity or intolerances, burning or tearing of my eyes, numbness or tingling. If you haven't read or heard of Casey Means's new book, Good Energy, I'm interjecting this in here, I highly recommend this book. As a very successful surgeon, she acknowledged that in medical school, the body was broken down into specialties. And the more specialized you got, the smaller part of the body you worked on, I guess. But highly specialized focuses on specific body parts or specialty roles, when in essence, the whole body works together. Symptoms are usually symptoms related to a larger issue that the entire body is working through. I will link that book up in the show notes. It's a must read. But she points out that all of the above crazy symptoms that many people battle, they could all actually be related to one common greater issue. It is not how we have been taught to think, and while it makes perfect sense, it goes against the entire medical model of find the symptom and treat it. Rather, you should find the root cause, and the symptoms will disappear when you treat the root. Not a new model, but new indeed for those in the United States medical school system that hammers in, find the symptom and treat it, into our heads. Which, as a side note, is how we end up on a different med for each symptom, and many of those meds can cause more side effects, and then we end up in the never-ending cycle of pharma madness. But if we were to treat the root cause, none of that craziness happens. In January of 2010, I went to my rheumatologist appointment. He was always so kind, and I know that room after room, he was dealing with patients like me or worse, in pain, hurting, broken, desperate for solutions. I had so much pain, but he looked me right in the eyes and said, "Penny, I am so sorry. These are just the cards that you have been dealt with autoimmune disease. You just might have to be on Vicodin for the rest of your life." In that appointment, he had taken my blood, he had weighed me, and while providing me with loads of Vicodin for the rest of my new lifestyle, also provided my day one objective baseline and motivation to launch the Candida diet for the first time. Will was 4 months old. I had my blood results. I had my weight. The next day, I started. So what is Candida or Candida? It's an overgrowth or an overinfestation of yeast in the body. It invades the brain and every tissue of the body and can be completely debilitating. It is a living organism, and it grows and lives on what you eat. It makes your body have cravings, and it is incredibly difficult to get rid of. Yeast cells alone are on our skin and our intestines. A normal body can keep the number of yeast cells under control. However, poor nutrition, such as high sugar or bad diets, or impaired immune system weakens the ability for the body to fight off the yeast. Stress and environmental pollutants can also play a role in reducing the body's ability to fight off that Candida. 2 personal notes. First, when I was in high school, my dermatologist put me on long-term, low-dose tetracycline to prevent breakouts on my face. I did not have acne. I did have occasional breakouts here and there, but it is listed as the first cause of Candida. To this day, I will not take my kids to a dermatologist for skincare because I firmly believe that my first symptoms started in high school while taking tetracycline. See the very first question on the Candida quiz. Have you ever taken a tetracycline? Within just a few months in high school, I had my first yeast infection. I got really puffy. Just imagine, like yeast does to bread. I was puffy, and for no reason. I was an athlete. I played tennis 7 days a week, and I wasn't just gaining weight. I just was really puffy. I still hate looking at pictures of me from high school. I had no idea the storm that was building in my body. If only I knew then. And it was the first time I remember asking my parents for something for my stomach because it burned. I took an antacid for heartburn. In the 90s, I knew nothing of probiotics to counter the antibiotics, nor did we understand the risk associated with the overuse of antibiotics. In fact, I had never even heard of a probiotic. I had no idea that these 3 major symptoms were related or that they were actually even symptoms at all. I gained weight, and I had no idea why. I had a yeast infection, and I had no idea why. I had heartburn, and I had no idea why. Now, if I hear anyone say anything close to the above, my instinct is to tell them, you need to check out Candida. The Mitchell Medical Group online states, Candida is an overgrowth of yeast that affects millions of people, many of whom are unaware of the cause of their symptoms. In fact, it is estimated that 1 in 3 people suffer from yeast overgrowth in Candida. That is a whole lot of people. My second aha was after I was married, my doctor gave me a diflucan for a yeast infection. Diflucan is an oral med for yeast infections / antifungal, released as a pill in 1990. It knocked me off my feet. It made me so sick and so nauseated, I had to call in sick to work when I read the side effects on the box, and they were endless. I had no idea that I was actually in die-off phase of the yeast. When the yeast dies, it causes all the symptoms on the box. But what I know now is that those side effects were actually good, as it was killing the yeast in my body. However, the yeast that managed to survive the die-off become superpowered yeast, and they were more difficult to kill as they become more drug resistant. As I mentioned before, the symptoms of yeast overgrowth are endless, and it is suspected that over 85% of the population actually has a yeast overgrowth. And it is so often overlooked or misdiagnosed by focusing on a symptom versus on the larger problem. We're the first generation of Americans that have been raised on antibiotics, even more specifically, the tetracyclines, as a quick and easy treatment before we understood the long-term effects of overuse. I do know my GI regularly tested me for Candida before I knew what it even was. His reason? My tongue was white. A white tongue apparently indicates yeast. He was such an incredible doctor. The blood tests are not reliable, and they never turned up positive, but he was certainly onto something well before his time. I only wish we figured it out then, because after that, I had 10 more years of multiplying yeast in my body that really ravaged my health. And who's to say it didn't cause the breakdown in my gut biome to allow the Crohn's to develop further? There's an article in WebMD that I'll link in the show notes that states several tetracycline antibiotics, namely doxycycline and minocycline, have shown a link to IBD, particularly Crohn's disease, the exact drugs that I took. Source: this is from the American Journal of Gastroenterology, December of 2010. Potential association between the oral tetracycline class of antimicrobials using to treat acne and inflammatory bowel disease. Awesome, right? As the yeast multiplies, they produce toxins that attack the immune system and destroy the good gut flora. Drugs are typically used to treat a fungal infection or a symptom-treating meds, when in all actuality, the yeast comes right back with more strength and power as soon as the drugs are completed, because now they're super yeast. So how in the world do you find relief and treat a Candida overgrowth holistically? You starve it to death. You can never entirely get rid of yeast with meds and even with holistic approaches, but starving the yeast is the best form of eradicating the majority of it. The idea behind starving the yeast is to eat such simple, God-made foods versus complex, highly processed foods. Simple food is the easiest for your body to break down, and by eating simple food, no sugar to feed the yeast, you starve the yeast and allow all the little ATPs, my biology friends, energy in our body. If you're not into biology, ATPs are the little energies that we need in our body to take care of ourselves. So all these little ATPs go to where they need to go to heal all the symptoms that we've discussed above. We use so many of our little ATPs to break down our highly processed diets. This allows them to free up from digestion priorities of our highly processed foods, and they're free to go heal what needs to be healed in the rest of our bodies. By relieving them of their digestion responsibilities, they go to the rest of the body, providing healing everywhere you need it. You don't take any meds. You can't have ibuprofen. You can't have anything that will potentially push things into the liver. The goal is to kill off the yeast, detox the cells into the bloodstream, and send it to the liver to do its thing. I have never had more respect for my liver than I did during this diet, ever. Phase 1 of this diet is called the die-off phase because I was 35 when I figured all of this out. I know it started when I was a teen. Even my nutritionist said I was the worst case that she had ever seen. My mom had to fly down to take care of my kids because I lived in the bathroom. For the record, when yeast dies, it is as orange as an orange peel. Any drainage from all orifices is bright orange. I puked orange. I pooped orange. I sweated orange. I blew my nose orange. As gross as all of that sounds, it meant it was doing the right thing. After day 1 of simply eating a very restricted diet of lean protein and vegetables only, P.S. you have to focus on what you can eat and not on what you can't, or you will never make it. There is no sugar, even from fruit, no seasonings with the unidentifiable, quote, natural flavors, no alcohol or fermented anything, no dressings, no milk for salad, no sugar in your dressings or any of your seasonings, no vegetables like carrots that turn to sugars. With complete transparency, the first time I did this was absolutely brutal. The lack of what I called good food combined with the radical 20-year-plus die-off made me depressed. It messed with my brain. It messed with everything in my body. My emotions were all over the board. And as the article mentioned, the yeast takes over your body. It gets into every single one of your cells. It gets into your brain. It deeply affects you. My mom and I, we still refer to it as my exorcism. I'm not kidding. I had a violent die-off. Most people I've spoken to did not experience it to this degree. So please don't let me scare you off because it was years of me being into this where the yeast had truly taken over my body because this is one of the best things you can do for your body. I think everybody should do it. Day 1, I was feeling a little puny and questioning, should I call my mom? By day 2, I was nauseous and I was definitely calling my mom. The reason is this. Not only did I have a newborn, but I was sick with Crohn's, but I was also what you would call herxing, or the Herxheimer effect. Herxing is understood to be caused by toxins from bacteria that are killed off during treatment. The bacteria is dying off and releasing the toxins, which can cause the body to have inflammatory response that are flu-like symptoms. Fever and chills, nausea, vomiting, headache, low blood pressure, hyperventilation. You can have a high heart rate, getting flushed, all the things. Any bad symptom. It's horrible. I started with feeling like I couldn't cook for myself, and then I just flat could barely take care of myself, let alone my children. One moment of cheating and you have to start completely over. If you feed the yeast just a tiny bit, it jumps for joy and it completely repopulates. This is all about a starvation game. Of the yeast, not of you. It is no fun, especially for a cheater, but cheating only prolongs or completely prevents the die-off. My mom swooped in, not only for the kids, but to make food for me that I could eat when I was able, and foods that I could get quickly that did not allow me to cheat because I was starved. I was literally using every bit of nutrition in my body to exist, so I would get hungry very, very fast. So days 1 to 8 are called the die-off phase. I remember being so miserable, and my nutritionist, whom I never met in person, she was praying for me over the phone while my head was hanging over the toilet, and she told me, Penny, you can stop. You can eat sugar right now, and it will temporarily make you feel so much better than you feel right now. But within hours, you will be right back to being as miserable as you were when you started. She was so good to me and encouraged me. I felt like I was near death, and this was simply by eating simple foods with no sugar. Over my dead body was I going to cheat. I was not going back. I slept on the bathroom floor for several days. I was in and out of awareness, and remember waking up in my bed maybe day 7-ish or so, and just my eyes just kind of looked around the room. My body was not convulsing. I was not puking. I was not nauseous. My nose was not running. My body was totally still. Whatever devil of Candida lived inside of me was at peace for now. And it is truly best described as the peace that comes after what I could imagine an exorcism to be. It was horrific. And then the peace was amazing. So I'm quoting from the blog that I wrote at that time. Grammy had to leave today and I was devastated, but she can't stay with me forever, unfortunately. She did say that she made her bed and not to wash the sheets because she will probably be back. Yay! So I will struggle through finding tolerable things to eat this week to try and keep myself fed. 4 p.m. becomes my witching hour as I start to get weak and nauseated and the cycle begins for the evening. It is not fun. However, I had to quit my pain meds to be on the diet. Would you believe that every day my joints feel better and better without any medication? And for the last couple of years, my mom has told me something was wrong with me, my brain. I am always in a fog, and my mom says I can't make decisions. As it turns out, that is a symptom of the yeast. My head is clearer today than it has been in years. Every day I notice an improvement in my symptoms, and even in things I did not know were symptoms. For me and for my family, who was starting to be more and more affected by my poor health, this is a complete miracle. The doctors told me over and over again that all these symptoms were a part of having an autoimmune disease like Crohn's, and basically I would have to live with it. They helped me by covering up the pain with medicine and pain pills, and I just refuse to live like that. I want to be healthy. I want to be able to exercise again. I like to play with my kids without fighting back pain, and I don't want to take 100 pills every day. I was determined never to take those pills as my lifestyle. I was going to be a normal mom. So day 9 to 10 is the detoxification phase. This is when the liquid diet gives your body one more big burst of healing, allowing all those little ATP energies to rush all over your body to what needs to be healed. Honestly, this liquid diet, which sounds like you might starve, was incredibly refreshing because your body is not breaking down any food anymore. You've eaten such simple food. This is refreshing and you are healing so much over these few days. It allows your liver and your kidneys and your blood supply to take the grody toxins that it's pulled out of all your cells from your organs and process them through your liver and through your kidneys and out the body. Your body needs rest in this stage. It is working very, very hard to detox and heal. Listen to your body. Rest, rest, rest. Phase 3 usually begins on day 12 and you get to start adding foods back in. Starting with just a sweet potato. It has a low glycemic index and you must listen to your body. If your body has even a negative reaction, an itch, a headache, a stomach ache, you still have a significant amount of active yeast in your body. So you return back to phase 1, eating again for 5 days in phase 1. And the cycle continues until you have no negative responses for 7 days. Phase 4 typically starts at day 22. Days 22 to 25 are pretty free, but don't get too cocky because day 26 to 27, we go back to phase one for more kick in the butt. And the low glycemic foods back in for days 28 to 30. And if you have zero negative responses, you're cleared. If you have anything negative, you return to phase one. And do not get discouraged if you have to return to phase one multiple times. I did. I think I ended up doing this for 45 days the first time I did it, and I probably should have done it longer. I was just over it. And full transparency, this exorcism was brutal. My nutritionist said that she and her family did it once a year, which is a great idea and motivation for me to hop on it right now. The next time I did it, it was nothing close to as brutal as far as my detox, and I had figured out what I could and couldn't eat and focused on eating to live versus living to eat. It was major mindset shift. I am getting ready to do it again, in fact, as I have noticed an increase in my sinus pressure and my brain fog and some anxious feelings. Well, I'm going to climb back on it for 30 days. The results, first and foremost, my family is always incredibly supportive of me and the crazy things that I do to detox or work to heal my body. They always say, this is good for you, honey, but I don't need to do that. But when my husband witnessed the healing that took place and the violent reaction I had to eating simple foods, he was all in. He waited until I could function and he climbed on the wagon. It was so much more fun to do it with someone for sure. Accountability is key. He had chronic allergies, and for about 2 to 3 days, he said he felt like his head was a balloon and had a lot of sinus drainage, and then he was done. Nothing close to my reaction. So please don't be scared because of what I endured. Final points. Our bodies are truly, fearfully, and wonderfully made. Psalms 139:14-16 says, I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. My nutritionist told me on day 21 I would feel like I was getting the flu and not to give up. It was my body's push to heal. I kid you not, on day 21, I told John I was so tired of it and I felt like I was getting sick. I just wanted a normal day. Gratefully, he said, wait a second, what day are you on? Sure enough, after looking at the calendar, I was on day 21. The exact same thing happened to him. When he was there, he told me he was getting sick. It was day 21. Does that not blow your mind? A perfect, systematic process each of our bodies have for healing. The more you study the body and the many processes we have assigned stages of healing, like grief, brain injury, now detoxification, the more I realize our bodies can only be made by a powerful and complex God. The obvious symptom changes. I failed to mention that she told me that our bodies heal in reverse. So any major surgery that I had was told I would feel pain for a day, it would heal and move on. I had had a now obvious, unnecessary hysterectomy, blamed it on excruciating pain in my abdomen that was not resolved with the surgery, but ultimately resolved with the yeast diet. I had also had a meniscus repair. I kid you not, in my quote healing phase, my uterine region, the most recent surgery, hurt for a day, and then the pain was gone for good. The next day, my knee hurt for a day, and then it was gone for good. I did heal in reverse. And it was nothing short of a miracle that there is a perfect equation for how our bodies heal. That still blows my mind. I don't understand the reverse piece, but I am sure it has something to do with our body prioritizing our needs. But think about the fact that these surgeries were months out from my diet. And because of the highly processed foods in our American diet, I still had not fully healed from those surgeries until I did this diet. It was befuddling. I had no more bloating, stomach pain, gas, burping, cramping. The gut issues go on and on. I had a strange itch on the top of my left foot. Who would tell a doctor about that? But it drove me crazy. That disappeared. But my favorite story of all happened one day when I was sitting at my desk. My mom, which, moms tell you all the truths, right? She had been telling me for months that I was not myself. I wasn't making decisions. I wasn't quick on my feet. My response was, hello, I had 3 boys, 5 and under, and I had a newborn baby, and I was absolutely exhausted on top of being sick. And she said, nope, this is different. And I had nothing for her. I knew what she was saying. I felt it, but I couldn't give her a better reason. I was just tired all the time. As I sat at my desk that day, I was overcome with a tingling in my feet. The tingle slowly went up my feet, up my legs, to my stomach, then to my chest, then to my neck, then my face, and out the top of my head with one big, huge tingle. This took maybe a minute or 2 in total. The best way I can explain it was like the Claritin commercial where her head becomes clear and you see the screen go clear. The minute the tingling went out the top of my head, I was clear as a bell. I immediately felt like a taskmaster. Like I could make a list and complete it. No more sluggishness or fogginess. I sat there for a moment alone thinking, what in the world just happened to me? It was very real and very palpable. I am fully convinced that that was the healing of the brain fog. The lack of decision making and slowness to react that my mom was seeing, it literally went up my body and out my head, and my brain was crystal clear. It was truly miraculous. This diet is usually a favorite in my conversation with others, as I think so many people are in my shoes, and no one has ever told them that potentially a handful of their symptoms could be related and treated outside of pills and also related to their food or to past medications or antibiotic use. Please let me reiterate here. You do not have to have Crohn's disease to have yeast overgrowth. The symptoms may resemble IBS, Crohn's, colitis, anything, migraines. If you have been on any antibiotic for any extent of time, even as a young child or a baby, this would be my first go-to. It is just so common, and I fully believe that we can help ourselves so much by following this 30-day plan to eliminate or kill off the yeast in our body. I am going to work on putting something together. For more information with my favorite recipes, my products, fair warnings, and tips, I cannot encourage this more, even for those who think that they're healthy. We are exposed to so many toxins that our body can address and remove if we simply give them the time and the proper diet to allow our miraculous body to do what it knows how to do best. It knows how to heal. It was created to heal. I will let you digest this, no pun intended, as I think looking at the whole body of symptoms is overlooked more than not. Most people go in for a complaint and doctors focus on one or more symptoms, and then the meds end up helping for a minute before the symptoms all return, thus increasing the doses of meds, and you end up in this vicious cycle of pain, frustration, possibly meds that are never going to ultimately heal what's going on with your body. I know. I've been there over and over and over again. And in the doctor's defense, they don't always know the questions to ask. If they haven't been in your shoes before, how could they know that you have an itch that won't go away on the top of your foot? Or better yet, if they were told that, what do they do with that? I had some of the most random symptoms, and symptoms that I would never have reported to a doctor or thought to go see a doctor for, that completely disappeared after this diet. You must advocate for yourself. Do not take no for an answer, or it's in your head, or you're a hypochondriac. Gratefully, I never heard those words, but I know many who have. Fighting for your health or for the health of a loved one is one of the most important things that you can do. So here you are, like going back in time with Scrooge. This was Penny in 2011. This diet literally changed my life, not only because it made me feel better, it relieved so many of my horrible symptoms, and I was so desperate to get rid of, but it opened my eyes to the incredible power of food. I posted Anne Wigmore's quote on my fridge for years. The food that you eat can either be the safest and most powerful form of medicine or the slowest form of poison. Have a great day.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you've enjoyed today's episode, hit that follow button, leave a 5-star review if you're so willing, and help spread the message of Becoming Natural by sharing it with a friend. Check out the resources in the show notes and join the email list to stay on top of all the latest and greatest happenings at Becoming Natural as we roll out exciting new things while we grow. Until next time, take those baby steps to a more natural life and always give yourself grace. Progress, not perfection, is the goal. See you next week.